to 7 plus 3 is 10.
Keep talking. You sound good. Keep talking.
This is a very interesting day for us. We had hoped in our fondest dreams that it would never happen, and now it's happening.
I've got to let him do all the talking, I think, because he's going to do it anyway.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Our interviewer, we're going to prompt questions.
Oh, you know what, they know what they want to say
You know
now.
what they want to say?
They
Perfect.
do, and then we'll see what they have in common.
Yeah, I'm going to start it off and then get to Ed, and then we'll go back and forth. And
That's fine.
hold
So
on.
we're rolling up-
And then at any point, if
Yeah.
somebody wants to ask a question, they can go right ahead.
We can stop at any time then and go from there.
Yeah, stop whenever you feel like it. He said he's fine, he's fine.
Tell us when you want us to, okay. Well, I'd like to start out by thanking Bill Hogan for those nice words. As a matter of fact, he said so many nice things, we were wondering who the heck he was talking about. But you know, we are also very surprised that this is happening. Because when you look at the careers of Ed and I, you will notice some things that are very significant. Number one, we went to St. Mary's High School in South Amboy, New Jersey. After we graduated, they eliminated the name of the high school and it became Cardinal McGarrick High School. We came to Seattle University. We played basketball there and they eliminated Division I basketball. I worked at the Kingdome and I did such a good job, they blew it up. We played for the Pittsburgh Pirates when they were so bad, they used to celebrate when we got rained out. And I said, all of those things happened. Ed was athletic director for 23 years. They dumped sports. So I'm wondering, what is the significance of having the two of us here today to talk about our accomplishments, because they're mostly failures as far as I can consider. But you know, tomorrow's the Super Bowl. And incidentally, there is a connection between the Super Bowl and the O'Brien family. Back in the 70s, the Cosmos were representing the North American Soccer League, and they had the three greatest players in the world. Pele from Brazil, Caniglia from Italy, and Beckenbauer from Germany. And they were playing against the Sounders, and son Patrick, who's here today, it was only this high, wanted to bring his soccer team down to the ballpark. And I finally agreed, got the 12 of them into my station wagon, and we brought them down, and they were under penalty of debt if they got on the field or they acted badly. Well, I must say they acted very properly, and the Cosmos were working out. And luckily for me and for them, the general manager of the Cosmos was at that time also running the Meadowlands, where the Super Bowl is going to be played tomorrow. And during the course of the day, he came to me and he said, at that time they had AstroTurf. He said, we're having trouble getting the paint off from our AstroTurf. And he said, how about you guys? I said, we don't have any problems. So I said, come on with me. I took him to our maintenance shop and I said, there's the paint we use. And he said, well, we don't use that. And I said, here, take a couple gallons. He said, what do I owe you? I said, nothing. He couldn't believe that, being from the East. But anyway, we're walking back and he says, is there anything I can do for you? I said, well, come to think of it, at the end of the practice, if Pele would come over and say hello to the boys, I think they'd be very happy. And he said, I'll see what I can do. So a little later he came to me and he said, when the practice ends, the coach is going to have the players sit around midfield on the pitch, as he called it. And afterwards he said, I think you'll like what'll happen. So this has happened and all the players leave except Pele, Beckenbauer, and Caniglia. And they all come over, and Pele looks at Patrick and the little team and said, would you like to come on field and play with us? You should have seen them jump over the railing, the whole bunch of them. And the three of them, the three greatest players in the world, played soccer with Patrick and his team for about a half hour. And then Pele took his shirt off and he signed it and gave it to Patrick. And you can't imagine how elated those youngsters were. They got home and they called every person in the world they knew to tell them what had just happened. And the next thing I hear a very serious banging on the second floor of our house, and I go up, and Patrick's got a nail about that wide, and he's nailing the Pele shirt to the wall, which we found when we moved, and Patrick is the proud owner back once again. So there is a connection between the Meadowlands and the O'Brien family. And all this happened close to South Amboy, New Jersey. That's where we started, and Ed is gonna tell you how it all started.
John was supposed to just introduce me by saying that. So he'll expound a little. Apologies to you. I had an interview this week and it ended up going 2 hours and I lost my voice. But I'll tell you about South Amboy. South Amboy is called the Mile City because it's 1 square mile, 7,200 people. And the interesting thing about it is there's no industry in the city. Puget Sound Electric Company is in there, but the rest is just residential and stores. It's one of the key people in town is a fellow named Utes Schultz. Now, Utes Schultz was about as wide as this chair right here, and about as high as this chair. And he was square. And we had a deal with the, we were taught by the nuns. It was an unusual town, 92% Catholic, Polish, and Irish. And in fact, the public school had so few students they couldn't field a football team. But it was a great experience being in that city. One of the things that probably a lot of people don't know, St. Mary's High School, or Father McCarrick right now, or Bishop McCarrick, has had 6 players in the major leagues.
In baseball.
In baseball, yeah. Thank you, John. Of the 6, it's Jack McCune, who was the manager of Miami, Florida Marlins when they won a championship. Tom Kelly, who was with Minnesota for many years. John and myself with Pittsburgh for me, and John with Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, St. Louis, and Milwaukee. Thank you, John. And a younger fellow that just came up with the Colorado Rockies, his name escapes me right now. But it was a town of characters. And one of the big characters in town was Barney Cohn. Now you think Barney Cohn, Jewish businessman. Nope, Catholic priest. And he used to take us over to Perth Amboy to get equipment. And Reiner's was the name, I believe, of the store over there. And we'd go into Reiner's and he'd pick up this and he'd pick up that and he'd pick up that. And I remember once I got my head split open. A basketball backboard fell on my head and split it open from here to here. Barney's over there getting a special hat made for me from the proprietor. Going around picking up stuff, and on the way out he hands the proprietor a $10 bill. And the proprietor looked at him and he says, "You should be one of us, Father. You should be one of us." We had an unusual thing with him. He belonged to a Philadelphia golf club. And at the golf club, they had a drawing for a Cadillac. And all the members were there. They had gotten Father Cohen a membership. All the members were there, and they pull out the name out of the hat. The winner of the Cadillac is Barney Cohen. And some guy in the back stands up and says, "Put it back in, the Jews win everything." I don't know whether you're going to have to delete that or not. So one of the fellows there said, no, that's Barney Cohen. He's a Catholic priest. So they give him the car. He drives it down to South Amboy. He gets to South Amboy, and Monsignor Griffin was the priest, the head of the priest there. And Monsignor looks at the car and he said, "Where did you get that, Bernard?" He said, "Well, I won it in a raffle." And he explained what happened. And Monsignor said, "We have created a problem here." He said, "What would it look like, you driving a Cadillac around town and me with this old beater I have?" He said, "It would not look good for the parish to have the head priest with a lesser car." So Barney never drove the car after that. It belonged to the bishop. I want to tell you about the family. Our uncle, not our uncle, but our grandfather Mike came from Ireland, married Teresa Finley, and they had 12 children. But it was a very unusual group. Humphrey, one of the sons, drowned in 4 inches of water. Got drunk one night, put his head down, never put it back up again. There was a good friend of ours named Lonnie Ayers. Lonnie was the sports editor for the Perth Amboy Evening News. And he came over and we were talking one day and he said, you know, it's great we all hang out at your grandmother's over there. They've always got food. And he said, oh, what a wonderful bunch. He said, they just really like each other. And I said, Lonnie, half of them don't speak to each other. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, let me tell you something. I said, Graham sits here in this chair doing crossword puzzles. Always would call and say, who is a giant great that played the outfield? And we'd say, Mel Ott. Oh, she said, you're so good on sports. We would say, thank you. Well, she sat right here, and her son Bill, who owned the house, sat here back to back and never spoke to each other for 40 years. And it all happened because Bill worked for a coal company. And the coal company put a bid on delivering the coal to the Catholic Church. And they were a penny, whatever, a barrel or whatever it was, under the other company. And the church still selected the other company. Well, he stopped going to Mass. And Graham used to go to Mass every day. But back to back, same house. Mary did not speak to Rita. Mary and Rita were in the same house. Rita used to cook for Bill. Rita didn't speak to Bill.
Remember they rang a bell when the dinner was ready.
Rita would cook Bill's meals, and then when she had it done, she would go out and ring a bell, and he'd come in and eat. Mary got a phone call one day from this little guy, or the person next door to her, and she said, just a moment, and she went and got the little gal also from next door and told her to go over and tell Rita there's a call for her. So this is the kind of stuff going on, and nobody knew at all what was happening with the group, because if we were here, it would be like everybody talking, but you'd think everybody's talking to each other. Well, you know, Katie may not be speaking to Jean, and John, of course, speaks for everybody. I have to tell you a story. It's kind of a sad one, but it was told to us. We were playing at the bottom of the stairs in the living room. They had the parlor, they used to call it. And then there was a little hallway here, and then the upstairs stairs. And Mike, who was Graham's husband from Ireland, he had a heart attack, fell down the stairs, and supposedly landed on one or the other of us.
We were a year and a half old at the time.
And they took him into the parlor, got the priest down from upstairs, and the neighbors all came outside, had the medic there working on him, or so forth. And Graham was something. She said, oh, it was beautiful. She said, here we're all in the parlor, all around Mike there, and we're all praying that he'd live. And she said, no, he said, the neighbors outside were praying that he'd live. And she says, we were all inside praying that he'd die. So it was an unusual city. I want to tell you how Jim, he's here, got his nickname of Troubles. Jim is probably the only guy in the United States that got 3 guys fired from one job. Vic Norton was the entrepreneur for the food in town. He owned a restaurant. He also owned Vic Norton's grocery store. Well, we had a job opening there, and so he gave it to John and myself alternate days. We could work the job. So we would go down there, and there was this big empty room like this next to the grocery store. And we would go in there and we'd bag potatoes and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. Just did
12.5 cents an hour.
Yeah. Thank you, John. And we played on so many baseball teams, we always had games. Well, this just happened to be a Saturday, and we had a doubleheader baseball game. So we asked Vic if Jim could come down and take our place for the day. Okay, fine. So down he came, but Vic made a mistake. He put Jim on the phone to take the Saturday orders. The people used to call their order in and they put them together. So he gives it to Jim and he goes away, and Jim's supposed to be writing the orders down. Well, at the end of the day, he's got 2 orders because he used all of the time to talk to other people on the phone. So Norton came in and said, "You're more trouble than anybody I've ever met. You, your 2 brothers, you're all fired." So that's how the name James Troubles O'Brien came into being. Well, I think I'll give it back to John now because he'll tell some more stuff about, oh, I have to tell you this one.
That was my line.
We had jobs, and our dad was called the chief, and everybody feared the chief. He kind of ran the city, you know, everybody, but he was 250 pounds and he was about 5'11", worked for the Pennsylvania Railroad with the coal cars coming in. And what did I do?
You're on the port, or when he was moving the barge?
Oh, but one of our jobs, I have to tell you this, one of the jobs we had, I was to take out the garbage. And you put the garbage out in the front part of the house. So and John's job was to take it in. Now we lived in a 4-plex. We were on the lower edge here. The McDonald's are above us. He was the editor of the Perth Amboy Evening News. The poles are above him on the other side. And next door to us were the Crock-Mollys, Steve and Molly Crock-Molly. Molly was a nurse who did tremendous work for helping our mother out when she was ill in the early 50s. Well, this one night, I got the bales out for pickup and John did not. Well, he did not want to cross the chief. So here he comes around the walkway and he's dragging the two pails with him. And he comes in and he grabs John and he just takes him like this and he puts him right on the wall. And he said to him, "If I didn't like the Crock-Mollys, I'd knock you right through this wall." And John came up with a great statement. "Hooray for the Crock-Mollys." I'm just looking here to see if I have some other stuff, but John's got a couple stories on South Amboy. So let's let John go with those stories, and I'll sit back and listen to him for a while.
Yeah, that was one of the many times I've been close to death when the chief went back like that when I said hooray for the Crock-Mollys. But the other part of what happened in the town, we were noted for the number of taverns that were in a 1 mile square area, and at one time applied, didn't qualify. But we were taught by the nuns, and they were called the Sisters of Mercy, and they showed very little, I might add. And Butch McEwen, Ed and I were in the same class all the way through, and I guess we were kind of called pranksters. We would always kind of come up with something. And so one day, we're out there at noontime after we ate, and we throwing the ball around, and it goes over in the weeds, and I go get it, and all these grasshoppers start jumping up. Well, we had a nun, I believe her name was Sister Cleophas, and she was the tidiest nun in the world. At noontime, before we went out, she'd put everything in her desk and quietly closed the door. Well, we got about 150 of those grasshoppers, and we snuck into the room, and we opened that desk and we put them all in the desk and we closed the door. Then we told everyone that we knew to be there on time for class. And in came Sister Cleophas, sat down, and she opened that drawer. And that was the first flying nun. And I swear, before her feet got down to the ground, she's O'Brien, and McEwen to the principal's office. And so we got 2 weeks of cleaning the backboards the boards. And then I think one other thing I remember, Sister Cleopatra, wasn't it? She had the one where we had to do the rhymettes.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
And everybody had a nickname. It was Shinty Kendi, Horse Tabasco, Oates O'Toole, Troubles O'Brien, Ace Hennessy, and Ed was called Citation because he runs, and I was called Shots because of basketball. Well, every 2 months they used to put this nice fancy paper out at the school, you know, with the cover and all that stuff. And 1 month it came out, and on the back, the headline was supposed to be, Shots O'Brien does it again. And somehow the guy claimed it was a typographical error. The O became an I. And you should have seen those nuns running around trying to get that paper back. But we would always do things that were kind of offbeat a little bit. And in the Sister Cleopatra's room, you had to get up and give 4-line rhymettes. Well, we'd get up and do them as fast as we could, and the girls would get up and do fancy ones. And it was Horse Tabasco's turn to go. And Horse was about that high from here and about that wide. And he gets up to the front of the room and he says, Little Mary Smith from Boston, Mass. stood in the water up to her ankles. And Sister said to him, that doesn't rhyme. And Horse said, wait till the tide comes in. 3-day suspension for that one. Oh, the nun didn't get it at first. And then, bam, she went right, get to the principal's office. You know, the nuns didn't have a great sense of humor.
Give me making the high school team now.
Huh?
Give me making the high school team now. Give me making the high school team now.
Oh, the name of the high school team now? Cardinal McGarrick High School.
No, I said, give me the name and let me talk about making the high school team.
Well, you're going to do that as soon as I get to it. So, we did that, the tide. And one time we got smart, and in class in the morning, the heat wouldn't come up on the radiators till about 9 o'clock, and class started at 8:30. So Butch and Ed and I got into the room one time, and we put liquid onion and garlic on the radiators. And when the heat came up, that was something else. But the nun was smarter than us. She said, all the girls stand. And she took all the girls out and locked the door and said, boys, enjoy yourself. We didn't become social lines on that one, I might tell. We had a coach named Epi. Let's see, all the boys, I got that, garlic, that, nun short, that one, Epi, Reggie. Epi, Charlie Eppinger was one of our coaches, and the beautiful thing about our coaches, they were Charlie Eppinger, Reggie Carney, and Lefty Zebro back east, and they were all fundamental coaches, which was good for us. And we've been asked over the years what it takes to be a great or a accomplished athlete. And Ed and I have both said the same thing. It takes 4 things. 1, desire. 2, proper attitude. 3, proper practice. And 4, 100% use of ability. And when you think about that, that's pretty darn close to what it takes to be a good citizen, too. And I remember that when we talk about desire, there was a player in the major leagues named Eddie Stanky. He played with the Cardinals most of his career. And he was not extremely talented. He would pull his shirt out like that to get hit with the pitch. He'd do everything, and he had the great desire to help his team. And that shows you that with good desire and hard work, it can happen. And proper attitude, and you think about it in baseball, if after a long career you hit 300, they put you in the Hall of Fame. And when you think about that, that means you failed 70% of the time. So you have to have a proper attitude toward what you're doing. Proper practice is, of course, knowing the fundamentals and putting them into use. Most times in sports, the things that happen are reactions. So you don't have time for a team meeting, so you react to how you've been taught. And of course, that's totally important. And the last one, as you would all imagine, is using your ability to 100%. Pretty much what it takes to be a good citizen. So we were happy and delighted to have that kind of instruction when we were youngsters back in South Amboy that helped us on our way getting toward Seattle. Ed will tell you now how that happened. We were 5 feet, 8.5, 5'9" at most, though we were never actually measured. And we graduated from high school, and we were okay in basketball and baseball, and we actually graduated cum laude out of high school, even with the nuns. And we were in high hopes of getting a scholarship because, and Ed will take it from there.
First, I have to tell you how we made the high school team. We never picked up a basketball till we were in about the 7th grade. Never played basketball at all. And played baseball on a multitude of teams, and everybody in town played baseball. It was a baseball city. So the coach was Charlie Eppinger. When we were freshmen, we tried out for the team. He cut us the first day. When we were sophomores, he cut us the second day. So we've had 2 tryouts now to make the high school team or the JV team, and we lasted 2 days total. So comes the junior year, and we get cut again. So now we're a junior in high school, and we've got no background for basketball because we haven't played it. What happened in those days, the JV team of the other school that you were playing the varsity game traveled with them, and the JVs would play each other, and that's how, you get the 2 games in each night. Well, Tottenville High School was coming over to play St. Mary's, and our gym was on the 3rd floor in the building, the school building. And in fact, the ceiling was so low, it was hit several times by somebody shooting a foul shot. So he became a kind of a line drive shooter. But Tottenville didn't show up with their JV team. So they went through the stands and said, go home and get some sneakers, and if you want to play, play. So we did, and we played our own team. And we beat him soundly. John did very well. And the next day, we made the team, halfway through. The one problem I had with it, and what John had with it more, Epi could not tell the difference between the 2 of us. And he was a strange type of coach. He used to schedule a practice for midnight on New Year's Eve because he didn't want the guys going out and drinking. So they all drank at 2 o'clock. And now he's playing, and we're playing St. Peter's in New Brunswick. And he tells John he's going to start him. And he says, I want you to score. You look like you can score. Well, what happened there is John played the first half of the game, scored 4 points. I sat on the bench in my beautiful gold jersey and warm-up uniform similar to the one back here. At halftime, we come in, and I'm sitting there waiting for Epi's speech. And Epi says, what did I put you in the game for? I said, what? He said, what did I put you in the game for? I put you in the game to score points. You took 3 shots and made 2 baskets. I said, you didn't put me in the game. I haven't played. He said, don't tell me you haven't played. I know who played and who didn't play. And he turns to John, who's sitting over there sweating, and says, okay, Ed, he won't shoot. You go in and play the second half. So the next thing that comes up is on to college. Now there's probably another little story or 2, but as we go along, we'll pick it up and get back to you. But in those days, you could sign with any baseball team, professional baseball team that was around. And it reminded me of something else just here. Just this summer, we received a very fine award. In our senior year, we won the state baseball AAU championship up at Newark Stadium. And we went to Johnstown, Pennsylvania. This was our high school team, basically. And we played in a national tournament in Johnstown. Well, it was about 60 years later, but this summer they put both John and myself in the Johnstown Hall of Fame. which was a nice honor. We were talking the other day, and John said, how many Hall of Fames are you in? I said, I don't know, 8, 9, something. I said, I know it's one less than you. So that's what happened there. But here along comes the chief, and I have to tell you another. See, one thing reminds you of another thing. I got arrested one night. I don't think anybody's ever heard this one.
I've heard it.
Oh, you heard everything. We were walking down Broad Street in South Amboy, and
Butts.
Horst Tabasco and Butts and John and myself. Well, Horst and Butts were in front of us, and we were behind them. We come down the street, and they're joking around, and one guy pushes the other guy, and he ends up in the hedges. So this guy comes out screaming at them, and Butts says, take off. So we all took off and ran. We don't think anything of it, so we're down there, Davis's Pharmacy, and car stops, and here's this guy in the car with his son, and he grabs me and he puts me in the back seat. So he takes me over to Quinlan's, or to the jail, which was, the sheriff was Quinlan, and wants me arrested for destruction of property. So they sent me over here. Now, the chief knew everybody, so the Quinlan wasn't a problem. So I'm sitting there, and along comes the chief. He said, what happened? I told him, I said, I didn't have anything to do with it. I said, it was Butts and Horst did it. He says, so the guy grabbed me, and Quinlan was just checking it out now. He said, what guy? I said, well, the one up in Boardwalk. He said, let's go. So he said, Quinlan, he says, I'm taking him. Quinlan says, go ahead. We go up. We had no car, so we walk up there. The chief walked up and slammed his fist right through the front door. Went in and grabbed this guy and shook him and said, don't you ever pull that on my son again. Turned and we walked out the door. So that's the way if you get arrested, just have your father come over and knock the door down. But one thing he put in, we're all set to sign with one of the 16 major league teams, and he says, you're going to college. You're not signing. If he said we're going to college, we're going to college. So the problem is, you got a 5'10" or 5'9" guys weigh 160 pounds. It's tough enough getting a scholarship for one of them rather than two. So anyway, now we're supposed to start out and figure out how we're going to get to college. It ended up with 4 schools involved. The first one was St. John's in New York, and then we wanted to go there. But what happened there, the Brooklyn Dodgers were going to put us through St. John's, and with the proviso that at the end of the signing, end of our college, high school, college stuff, we would sign with the Brooklyn Dodgers. But in checking it out, they found out it was illegal to have a pro team put you through college and then sign with them. So we couldn't do that. Columbia University offered us 1 scholarship between the 2 of us. It wasn't going to work. The third one was Mount St. Mary's in Edmundsburg, Maryland. And that was going to be put through by Dr. and Mrs. Huffman. The Huffmans, he was the doctor in town, and he was going to put us through college. So we're all set to go to Mount St. Mary's. All of a sudden, about a month before, Mrs. Huffman comes over and asks to talk to us. And she said, we're holding true on our promise. We will pay your way through Mount St. Mary's. She said, but we have one provision. We don't want you to play sports. We want you to be doctors. And we'll pay your way through to become doctors. We turned that down, and John says, how many lives do you think that saved? Now we got one left, Seton Hall. Seton Hall was coached by...
10 miles from South Deadwood.
Yeah, it's 10 miles away, and Honey Russell was the coach there. They had a cork floor, which was a different type floor. And what Honey would do, he would have tryouts all week. You could do certain things today that you can't do then. And he'd do the tryout, and after the tryout, a full week's tryout, he'd pick 10 players that he thought should be considered for his scholarships. And then he played a full game on Saturday night, and then he awarded his scholarships. But we make it to Saturday night and do very well. Sunday we get a telegram telling us, thank you for your efforts, but I don't think you're big enough for me.
You fit and you don't fit.
You don't fit into my program. And incidentally, John, with just 1 year of high school coaching, was the All-State Center in New Jersey, up where the Catholic schools. So now we've got nothing. So what do? We stay at home, work in a terracotta factory, and we were toilet bowl inspectors.
Now, don't complain, because that was a pretty good background for me getting into politics later on.
That was going to be my next line. So we continued to play baseball, we continued to play basketball, and nothing happened. So now the next year we think we're going to sign. Nope, you're not going. You're going to college first before you sign. So we end up going to college is not available again. And I'll tell you right now, we're going to open it up for you for questions for about 5 or 10 minutes. And then I'll tell you how we got to CLU.
Before you do that, with the family here, I have to think, and we're jumping around, I emceed the Catholic Seamen's Club luncheon twice a year for years and years and years. And Ivor Haglund, who Ivor's used to be one of the sponsors, and he always wanted me to do his deal. And you about 300 people there and a whole bunch of politicians up at the front desk, and you'd goose them around and have a lot of fun. And all the proceeds went to the Catholic Seamen's Club for helping sailors and people in need. And after one of the deals, speaking of family, Ivor come up to me, he said, "Johnny," he had that voice like that, he said, "Let me ask you a question. How much do they pay you for this?" I said, "Ivor, I've been doing this stuff for years and I've never been paid. I just enjoy doing it." He said, "I thought you got paid." I said, "No, I don't get it." He said, "Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do." He said, "I'm going to send you a letter and I want you to bring the family to one of my restaurants and it's all on me." I said, "Ivor, got a pretty big family." He said, "Don't worry, Johnny, you'll get the letter." The next morning I pick up the paper and Ivor died in his sleep.
Oh, no.
He must have found out how big the family was. So we never did get to do that. And one other thing that strikes my mind when you think about what's happening here today and whether it makes any sense. We were up in Vancouver, British Columbia playing UBC, and I went into the basket and the guy cut my legs out. I flipped up in the air and I hit my head on the bench, and I saw every star in the world, and I struggle out to the foul line, and the referee hands me the ball and he says, "1 shot." I said, "What the hell do I got to do to get 2 shots?" He says, "For your information, the ball went in." I said, "Oh, excuse me." So I shoot the deal, and afterwards, they take me over to St. Paul's Hospital in Vancouver, and they do some x-rays. And we go back to Seattle, and the next day the telegram came, and it was worded like this: "X-rays of Mr. O'Brien's head showed nothing." So you get what's coming out of a head that shows nothing. Now, any fast questions?
Tell us about your mom.
What about our mother?
I'll take one.
You want that one too?
Yeah, our
You know,
mom.
you were talking about me bumping my gums a lot. What about Mom?
My mother's name was Margaret Smith. She was an orphan. No, not quite an orphan, but she worked for the Cones up the street, and She had 3 sisters, Nora, Eleanor, and Mary. They lived in New Brunswick. Now try this on for size. They lived in the same house, Eleanor did, in 41 Stone Street, New Brunswick, New Jersey. She lived in the same house for 87 years. They finally tripped and fell once, and then they had to leave the house. My mom was the only one that can control the chief. She said something, the chief did it. And I'll never forget once, we used to play basketball in the kitchen. We'd get a bread wrapper and roll it up and put a little tape or a little string around it. And the garage door was at here and the front door was here. So we'd tack a little bag up on there, just a bag, and then John and I would play basketball against each other in the kitchen. Well, the chief all of a sudden found out about it, and he forbade us from doing it. So one night we're doing it, and all of a sudden we hear him coming around the side street. Oh, we got trouble. He opens the door, and here's Mom shooting baskets. She took the ball and says, I'll take care of this. She took the little shot baskets. But she was a lovely, lovely woman, very small. They fell in love over the back fence at the Cohns, who adopted her. What happened is her mother passed on, of the 4 girls, and the dad could not take care of them himself.
Their name was O'Grady.
Yeah, and so what he did is he put each of them in a different home where they could be raised. But she never complained, never saw much, never, I don't think she ever went past New York in her life. We were 29 miles away. But
Did she save your baseball gloves once?
oh, he was going to, the chief?
No, your mother.
Yeah, what happened is the chief, when he'd get mad at us, he'd come up with something to do, and he'd always hide our gloves and tell you I burned them at the coal downstairs. And he'd hide them, and she'd go get them out and put them away. Speaking of that, too, we remind me of another thing. The chief thought we were too skinny. So what does he do? He working for the railroad. They had these 12 by 12 ties, railroad ties, big, long things.
Must have been 20 feet long,
Yeah.
weighed a ton.
Now we got a backyard. It's small, maybe. Well, Terry's seen it. Maybe about the size of this room right here is our backyard for 4 families. Well, this Saturday morning, here comes a truck, and it's got all these logs. Drops them right in the backyard. We don't have a backyard anymore. They're all full of
They
logs.
either did the crock mollies or the poles or the McDonald's.
And he said, then he gets this big, those big saws you pull, I pull. He comes up with one of those and says, "There, cut those." And I'll tell you, it took us about 2 years to get them done. And he did give things away. We got, when you play for sport teams, you always end up with jackets and stuff like that. So we're home one night, and it's raining, and I go to look for a jacket. I look on the thing, and I said, "What is going on here? All our jackets are gone." So I asked Mom, I said, "What happened to our jackets?" He said, "Well, he gave them away." So when he came home, I said, "Dad, what happened to our jackets?" He said, "Well, there's a lot of poor people in town. I gave them to the poor people." I said, "We're the poor people."
Which we were.
But go ahead, John.
Are you finished there?
Yeah, I need the cards from you, Tara.
Do you want these others?
Yeah.
Do you guys want a break, or do you want to keep rolling?
No, we'll keep bumping our gums if you don't
While
mind.
there's a voice,
Do
we'll
you
keep
want more
going.
questions?
You didn't quite finish how you got to
Uh,
Syria.
At this point, we'll take 2 questions.
And we thought we were in charge.
I know that from the beginning.
Okay, I have one. Seeing as you have a lot of grandchildren, some of them here today who are really involved in sports and maybe would like to go professional at some
Well, when we sold the house to the Eggy across the street who was in real estate, her advice was take the money and run. But that's not especially true in regard to, they talk about paying college athletes today. But they don't take into consideration the fact that that college education involves getting free learning for 4 years. And that is tremendously important because in sports, you're going to be, even at your best, very limited in the length of time you play in sports, unless you stay in the game as a manager or a coach or something like that. So you're going to have something to fall back on. And that is an education. And it's tremendously important to get a full education. And especially with me being at the Kingdom, which had sports tenants as well as administrative duties, and it just fit perfectly into the education that I had at Seattle University. The same with Ed as he became the athletic director of Seattle University in an administrative position. And that was totally responsible because we spent the 4 years of learning and what college education is and what had been given to us by the fact that we had a scholarship. And we felt that doing what we did was a payback to the university for what they had done for us. And I don't know whether any of you know this, but the university was so grateful when we graduated, they gave a scholarship to the rest of our family. Jim, Bill, and Teresa were given scholarships to Seattle University. And they all came out. Bill didn't like college. He quit halfway through the first year and went to Hostess Bakery and was there until he passed away. And I might add, I don't know whether this was said, our mom died at 46 and our dad at 52. Now, Ed and I are past 83 right now, so we've been in bonus time a long time. And Jim's 81, Teresa is 70, she's 78 now. Bill was only 54 when he passed away. So we were grateful for the education. And that's something to really take into consideration because, and of course, what's happening now, the game has changed in many ways. And I'm not talking about the three-point shot. I'm talking about free agency in baseball, plus the agent coming in. And the agent is jumping in and he's telling these youngsters who have an opportunity to make a few bucks, take the money now because you could get hurt and things like that. And and the other party said, well, you'll have enough money that you can buy your way through, buy an education later on. And that's what the agent is doing. And this is a pretty hard thing for youngsters and their parents to turn down when they throw with a significant sum of money at them. But it has to be, I think, weighed against the value of that complete college education. And that's something that we try to tell the youngsters to think about. Did you want to say something?
No, you said it all, man. No, your life evolves in certain circles. You should try and say, okay, I'll have a goal. I will have a goal in life as to what I want to do, and work it, and make it a decent goal. And don't be upset by failure. I think that's one of the great teachers of sport. You're playing a basketball game, you lose the game. 2 days later, you come back, you win. It teaches you that, you can come back from any specific thing that's a problem. Don't give up on yourself. But this is a family that strives to do well, and they do very well. I think a lot of people would love to model themselves after this family. John?
Well, we haven't actually gotten to Seattle University yet, but I want to reflect back, and we talked about Yutzi Schultz. His mother hated the name Yutzi, so if we called and said, is Utes there, she would hang the phone up. But anyway, Utes was, he wasn't Mr. 5x5, he was Mr. 5x7. And he liked playing practical jokes, but he was a great friend. And I'll never forget one time, Utes is driving, Lonnie Ayers, the sports writer for the Perth Amboy Evening News, who was a good friend, Ed and I, and was Troubles with us then? Went to
Yeah.
Asbury Park?
Oh, yes, he was.
And we go to Asbury Park, which was about 20 miles away, and we have a good time. We go stop at Joe's Pizza Place and get a pizza,
I need that.
a sausage sandwich and a thin pizza with, what was that? It was like a root beer. It was called some other kind of beer, which wasn't
The
alcoholic.
case.
And we have a good time at Asbury Park, and we come back and get in the car. And I mean, it stinks to high heaven. And nobody's saying anything, and finally Lonnie Air says, well, who did it? And it was none of us. And somebody got in the car and let a dog poop in the car. And so we pull into this gas station, and we got handkerchiefs over our face. And the guy thinks we're coming to rob the station. He calls the cops, and the next thing we're all up against the wall. And Yuchi's screaming, I'm never ever South Amboy, New Jersey, you can't do this to me, and all that stuff. And we finally got it straightened out, and then the guy wouldn't even sell us gas. He was so mad about us going to the thing. But Utes like to come to Seattle and surprise us. And Father Lemieux would hide him in his closet, and we'd Father say, I need to see you two. He'd roar, and he'd say, oh, I got something in the closet. And Utes would jump out. Ah, you two! And we said, we'll get you, Utes, we'll get you. So one time Father alerted us that Utes was coming out. So we got with Claude Norris, who was a deputy sheriff, who had friends in the Seattle Police Department. And Utes came in, and Father allowed him to sleep up in the priest house. So Utes was coming over, and he was going to take Mary and Ann and Julie to dinner. And they were all duded up, and he took them out to dinner. In the meantime, Father Lemieux has the locks changed at the priest house. And he's got a key that ain't going to work. And so Utes gets the girls home about 11:30, something like that, and he goes down to the priest's house, and he puts the key in, and it won't work. And we got 2 Seattle cops hiding there. And they come out, and they arrest him. And they take him down to the clink, and they got him in a cell down there. And he's screaming bloody murder. I'm the same Mary Southern. He says, get a hold of Father Lemieux. So they call Father. And Father goes down, and they bring him in, and they say, Father, do you recognize him? And Father says, I've never seen that man before. So after a half hour, we let him out, and we said, Utes, it goes both ways. But he was a great person. He really was. And that's another thing that we're very grateful about. During our limited lifetime, we've run into some very, very wonderful people. Father Lemieux at Seattle University, Branch Rickey, who we'll talk about later, and the people back in South Amboy. Epi, you know, he did strange things, but he did them for good purposes, like us having workout at midnight on New Year's Eve so nobody'd be drinking, stuff like that. It was for our own good, and we were happy to have things like that happen. Questions? Remember, there is no such thing as a dumb question.
Okay.
I got a dumb question.
10 minutes.
If you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be?
What's that? Say it again.
If you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be?
That's a joke.
I'd be a sturdy oak.
That's just,
Tell us one thing about the other one that most of us wouldn't know.
Well, somebody said, what would you buy? We never bought presents for one another. Somebody said, what would you buy for Ed if you did give presents now or then? And the only thing I could think of would be elevator shoes. And Edward, have you thought about anything like that?
Yeah, I'd get you a mask for your face.
Both very practical gifts.
But we have never given each other a gift all these years. Now, we did wedding anniversaries, I think, a gift, but that's Terry's business. But we have never so much as given each other a card or a gift. And everybody thinks, boom, boom, you know, that they're that close. We are close, but we don't get into those little things.
And
I have to show you something here. We get to this eventually. One thing that's happened over the years. Got this little card, I'll pass it around. They send you sign them, send them back. This is a guy that put this together. That's the scoreboard in Pittsburgh, and that's supposed to be John and myself. So they send you this, you sign, and so forth. Well, those both pictures are me.
Is that a baseball card?
Yeah, no, he put that together. I'll pass that around.
Yeah, in 1952, that's a little before most of you were born,
I got it, and I'll take care
I
of
was
it.
fortunate enough to be selected as the PI Man of the Year. And the thing I liked about that is I get a free meal out of the PI every year. And this thing is going on to this day. So 52, that's 62 years I got a free meal out of the PI and now the Sports Council.
Let me tell it.
And every year, they have a program. This is a copy of one of the years. This is 2006. So in the program, they have pictures of the past winners. Edward?
Okay, I'll pass this around too. These are the past winners for the PI for all these years. Well, if you look at this thing, I am supposed to have attended this banquet for 62 years. It's my picture, and they've used the same picture, and I've told them about it for 60 years.
Yeah, it's the 1952 winner, John O'Brien, Seattle U basketball. It's Ed's picture. And one of our baseball cards.
Yeah, the 1957 bubblegum card is also my picture, Knox Johns. Now, does that tell you something?
Yeah, it's the one that with the yellow on it. That's Ed's picture in my card. We never told Tops about it.